Okay, guys, hi. Let's continue. In the last lecture in chapter 5, I will do two more exercises, 5.11 and 5.12. And by these two exercises, we'll finalize chapter 5. 5.11. Fill in the blanks. Fill in the missing amounts in each of the 8 case situations below. Each case is independent of the others. Hint, one way to find the missing amounts would be to prepare a contribution format income statement for each case. Enter the known data and then compute the missing items. So we do have missing items for A, assume that only one product is being sold in each of the 4 following case situations. Number 1, they give me the units sold for 15,000 units, sales of $180,000, variable expenses in total of $120,000. Be careful that the next column, they give me the contribution margin per unit. Contribution margin per unit, which means the contribution margin divided by units sold, not the total contribution margin, which is needed actually. The fixed expenses and the net operating income or loss. So let's prepare first the income statement in a contribution margin format for the first case. I will open a new slide. This will be exercise 5.11a, which is one product. Then we need an income statement or format income statement, contribution format income statement. So start with sales minus total variable expenses or costs. This equals to the contribution margin minus total fixed costs. This equals to the net operating income. Okay, we'll start with the first case. Go back to the question. They give me the units sold 15, so we can add it to the head here. 15,000 units. Okay. The sales were $180,000. The variable expenses are $120,000. And the fixed expenses were $50,000. $50,000. Okay. Now, the contribution margin. What we need is the contribution margin per unit and the net operating loss. Okay. Okay. For the contribution margin per unit, it is simply the contribution margin divided by 15,000 units, right? 15,000 units. So here, the contribution margin ratio is equal to contribution margin divided by units, simply, right? No, not ratio. Contribution margin per unit, right? Per unit is equal to what? per unit, which is the requirement, right? The required is contribution margin per unit, not percentage. The percentage means contribution margin divided by sales. Contribution margin per unit, which means contribution margin divided by the units. Okay, so we need first to calculate the contribution margin, which is simply the difference between the sales and the variable costs, which is 60,000. That's all. So the contribution margin per 1 unit here is equal to what? Contribution margin $60,000 divided by 15,000 units, which equals to $4. So the contribution margin per unit is equal to contribution margin in total divided by units. So 60,000 divided by 15,000, and this equals to $4 simply. The last thing, which is what is the net operating income or loss? Contribution margin minus the fixed cost will equals to the net operating income. 60 minus 50, this equals to 10,000. So this is the missing one, which is the contribution margin per unit, and the other missing, which is the net income for case 1. For the case 1. Okay. Case 2. They give me the sales for 100,000, the fixed cost for 32, the net operating income for 8,000. So again, let's prepare the income statement again. Case 2, they give me what? They give me 100,000 for the sales, 32 for the fixed, 8 for the $8,000 for the net income, and they give me also the contribution margin per unit is $10. Contribution margin per unit is $10. We cannot add it here. $10 or in the other cell here. Okay. The starting point here will be the contribution margin. So contribution margin minus fixed equals to the net operating income, which means the total of fixed expenses and the net operating income will be the contribution margin, which is 40,000. This is the starting point here. Okay. This is the starting point. The missing, the units are missing also. Okay, missing. So the starting point will be the computation of the contribution margin total, right? Which is for 40,000. And similarly, the variable expenses will be 60,000 because sales minus variable is equal to the contribution margin, which is 40. So the variable cost is 60. Now for the units, we can use contribution margin per unit. Contribution margin per unit is equal to what? Contribution margin divided by units, right? So we do have it for $10 here. This equals to contribution margin is $40,000 divided by X, which is the units. So the missing are the units. So units are equal to what? To 4,000 units. U is, or units will be 4,000 units. So the units here are 4,000. Okay, 4,000. This is for case 2. Case 3. Case 3, they give me the 10,000 units sold, 10,000 units sold, 70 is the variable, 70 is the variable, 12,000 is the net operating income, and 13 is the contribution margin per unit. 12 is the net operating income, and the contribution margin per unit is what? Is 13. Here is 13. Okay. So the starting point again will be what? The contribution margin. The contribution margin per unit is 13. And we do have the 10,000 units sold. So the starting point will be the calculation of the contribution margin. This will be 130,000, which is simply 13 times 10,000, 130,000. If we have the 130,000, then we can say the sales are 200,000 and the fixed expenses are 118,000. So all or these two numbers, depending on the contribution margin, which is in the middle of the equation. If we calculate the contribution margin for 130 plus 70 will give you the sales for 200,000 and minus the net operating income of 12,000. This will give you the fixed expenses for 118,000. That's all for case number 3 here. Okay. Case number 4. Case number 4. They give me a loss of 10,000. Fixed expenses are 100,000. Sales are 300,000. Units sold are 6,000. Let's put the given numbers here. Units will be 6,000. Sales are 300,000. Variable expenses are missing. Contribution margin is missing. Per unit is missing. Fixed expenses are 100,000. And the loss for a negative number, $10,000. Simple. If we do have fixed expenses and the net operating income, the contribution margin can be calculated here. So contribution margin is the total of these two numbers. So the contribution margin will be 90,000. Because we do have a loss here for 10,000 plus the fixed expenses for 100,000, this equals to 90,000. So the contribution margin cannot cover the fixed expenses, and we do have a loss for 10,000. First, if we have the 90 here, then Again, we can calculate the variable cost per expenses, which equals to the 210,000, which is to be added to the contribution margin, 90,000, to have the 300,000 of sales, right? And the contribution margin per unit, which is also required, it is simply 90,000 divided by 6,000 units. This equals to what? $15. $15. This was case number 4. Case number 4. Okay, for B, 11B, assume that more than one product is being sold in each of the following case situations. Same, but we have more than one product, which means the contribution margin will be an average contribution margin ratio. So let's try to solve this. This will be what? Exercise 511B. Okay, B, which is something else. Case B1, if you like. And delete these numbers. Delete this. Okay, for case 1, we do have sales for $500,000 here, and is equal point will be the contribution margin ratio in this case. Look, the sales comprises, do we have any units? No, no. So the sales 500, 20%, and 7,000, that's all. Okay, the starting point will be the percentages. The sales represent the 100%. 100%. Remember that if the contribution margin was 20% of the sales, which means the remaining, which is 80%, will be for the variable expenses, right? So simply we can calculate the contribution margin and the variable expenses from these two percentages. Again, the key for this question is to know that the percentage of the contribution margin represents the contribution margin by or over the sales. So the contribution margin ratio is equal to what? Contribution margin divided by the sales, which represent 20%. And this means that the variable expenses will be the remaining, which is 80%. So the 20% of 500,000, this equals to 100,000. The 80% of 500, this equals to 400,000. That's all. So the fixed expenses in this case, 100 minus 93 will equals to 7,000. So the key was to know that the percentage of the contribution margin plus the percentage of the variable expenses, this equals to 100%. Okay. This was case number 1 or B1. B2, B2, they give me 400 sales, 260 variable, 100 fixed. B2, 400 sales, 260 variables, 100 fixed. Simple. 400 minus 260, this equals to what? 140,000, right? Minus 100, this equals to 40,000. That's all. What is needed? We need the ratio, which is the contribution margin or the average contribution margin ratio. This is simply the contribution margin ratio is equal to what? Contribution margin divided by sales. So this equals to 140,000 divided by 400,000. This equals to 35%. 140 divided by 400. This equals to 35%. That's all. Okay. Case number 3. B3. No need for this. And no need for this. For number 3, they give me what? 130 fixed expenses, 20 net operating income, 60 contribution margin ratio. So case 3, they give me 20 for the net income, back to the fixed expenses 130, this is, and the contribution margin ratio is 60%. Okay, simply the contribution margin is the combination between the fixed expenses and the net operating income in this case. So this comprises as 150,000, right? Go back in the income statement. So 20 plus 130, this equals to 150,000, okay? The 150,000 is equals to 60% of the sales. 60% of the sales. So the sales simply is the 150 divided by 60, right? 60, if you like, 60 here. 60% of X, which is sales, or S, equals to 150,000. 60% of sales is equal to 150,000. So the X, which is sales, equals to what? 150,000 divided by 0.6 or 60%. This equals to what? This equals to 250,000. 250,000. Similarly, this will be 40% of the 250, and this will be 100,000. That's all. Case number 4, B4. Case number 4, they give me what? 600 for 20 and 5 loss. 600 420 and 500, 5,000 plus between brackets. Okay, the key again will be the contribution margin. Contribution margin is the difference between sales and the variable cost. This equals to 180,000. The 180,000 represent a percentage of what? 180 divided by 600. 180 divided by 600, this equals to 30%. 30%. The 180 minus fixed is equal to a loss of 5,000. So the fixed are equals to 185,000 in order to get a loss of 5,000. That's all for 11. Okay, 11. Let's do 12. Olongapo Sports Corporation distributes 2 premium golf balls, Flight, Dynamic, and Sure Shot. Monthly sales and the contribution margin ratios for the 2 products follow. We do have 2 products, sales for each product, the total for the company, and the contribution margin ratio. Again, the key is to know what is the contribution margin ratio and what is the relationship for this ratio with the other components of the net income, of the income statement. Fixed expenses total of $183,750 per month. What is required from this question? Prepare a contribution format income statement for the company as a whole. Carry computations to 1 decimal place. So they need a contribution margin income statement for the whole company, includes the 2 products. What is the company's break-even point in dollar sales based on the current sales mix? And if the sales increase by 100,000 a month, by how much would you expect the monthly net operating income to increase? What are your assumptions? Okay, let's start to prepare the income statement. Prepare the income statement. We can use now we need 4 columns. Okay, exercise 5.12. We need an Excel sheet of 4 columns at least and some rows. Okay. We have here the products. We do have Flight, Dynamic, and Sure Shot, and total for the whole company. Sales minus variable expenses this equals to contribution margin minus fixed expenses. This will give me the what? The net operating income. Okay. Now, maybe we'll need this column for some calculations. What is given in the question, we do have 150,000 sales from the first product, 250 from the second product, thousands, and the total is 400,000. This is what given in the question. And more important, they give me that the contribution margin ratio for the first product is 80%. For the second product is 36%, and it is unknown for the company. This will be a key also. 80% from the first product, which is 150,000. This means 150,000 is 100%, okay? 150,000 is 100%. 80% of this sales will be a contribution margin. So the starting point to calculate the contribution margin, which means 80% times 150,000, this equals to 120,000 here. So the key or the first step is to calculate the contribution margin in total, which is 80% of the sales from the first product, which is given 36 times 250. This equals to 90,000 for the second product, and also we use the 36% times 250%, okay? $250,000. And the total for the company will be 210,000, which is the total of these two numbers, 120 plus 90. Now, if you like, maybe it is worthy to calculate the contribution margin ratio for the whole company, because we will need this ratio. This is simply the 210 divided by 400. Let's calculate it. The 210 thousands divided by 400,000. This equals to 52.5%. 52.5%. 52.5. So we can write it, if you like, 0.525. Okay. We will need this percentage. It is simply the contribution margin for the whole company divided by the total sales for the whole company. Accordingly, the variable expenses will be the remaining percentages, right? So the remaining percentages for the first product will be 20. Why? Because we have already 80. For the second one will be 64 because we have 36. And for the whole company, we have 52.5 already for the contribution margin. The difference, or up to the 100, we have 47. 47.5. 47.5%. Okay. So 20% out of 150, this equals to 30,000. 30. Verification 30 plus the 120 is equal to the sales, which is 150. The other one will be 64 out of 250. This equals to 160,000. And for the whole company, this will be 120, 190,000, or simply you can say 400 minus 210, 250 minus 90, 150 minus 120 to calculate the variable expenses. Okay. Okay. The fixed expenses. So again, the key, before going for the question, the key for the question, go back, we'll start with the ratios, contribution margin ratio. 80% for the first product, 36 for the second product, and it is unknown for the company, for the whole company. So we will say 80% of 150,000 will be the contribution margin total for the first product. This equals to, as we calculated, 120,000, okay? And 36% out of 250 is the contribution margin for the second product, which is 90,000. So the total of these two numbers, 120 plus 90, this equals to the contribution margin for the whole company, which is 210,000. And we can calculate the ratio for this number by dividing 210,000 out of the 400,000, so 52.5%. The remaining will be the variable expenses. So if you like, 150 minus 120 is equal to the 30 variable expenses for the first product. Similarly, 250 minus 90 is equal to 160. 400 minus 210 is equal to 190. Or the remaining percentages will be or represent the variable expenses. So for the first product, we do have 80% for the contribution margin. So the remaining, which is 20%, will be for the variable expenses, okay? And so on. For the fixed expenses, it will not be distributed to the two products. Why? Because in all cases, it is constant. We are paying it for a level of a company or the whole company. So 183,750 will be the fixed expenses for the whole company. And then the net operating income, which is 210,000 minus fixed expenses, this equals to $26,250. $26,250. That's all for number A or 1, which is the contribution margin format income statement for the whole company. Okay. What is the company's break-even point in dollar sales based on the current sales mix? What is the company's break-even point in dollar sales based on the current sales mix? Okay. Let's open a new slide. 5:12:2 to continue. The break-even point in dollar sign in sales dollars is equal to what? This equals to fixed expenses, fixed costs, divided by overall contribution margin ratio, overall contribution margin ratio. This equals to fixed expenses are 183,750 divided by what? The whole or overall contribution margin ratio, which is given or no. We calculate it to be 0.525, which is 52.5%. and this equals to 350,000 dollars. $350,000. This will be the break-even point for the company as a whole, given the 52.5% of the overall contribution margin ratio. Okay. For the last question, if sales increase by 100,000, if sales increase by 100,000 a month, by how much would you expect the monthly net operating income to increase? What are your assumptions? This is a good question. We need to know that if we have an increase in sales, this will affect the net operating income by the ratio of the contribution margin. Assume that we don't have any change in the fixed expenses. So increase sales by 100,000. This will be multiplied by the contribution margin ratio, which is 52.5% or 0.525. This equals to increase or change. We can say change or increase here because it is given as an increase. Change sales by $100,000 positive number multiplied by the contribution margin ratio, which is 525%. This will give you the change in net operating income. Assume we don't have any change in the fixed expenses. If we have any change in fixed expenses, then we will calculate also or consider the change for the fixed expenses. So 100,000 times 0.525, this equals to $52,500,000. $52,500. Assume no change in the fixed expenses. All of this additional contribution margin should drop to the bottom line as increase in the operating income. If we have an increase in the contribution margin, go back to the income statement if you like. If we have an increase in the contribution margin for 52,500 and no changes for the fixed cost, then all of these increase will be in the net operating income for 52,500. This answer assumes no changes also in what? No changes, assume no changes in fixed costs or expenses, no changes in prices, variable costs, which means variable cost per unit, or the sales mix. So we assume all variables or factors are fixed or didn't change, constant, and this will result an increase for the net income for the amount we calculate, 52,500. That's all. By this exercise, we finalize chapter 5. Okay. So thank you.